Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for waiting. Now, this is all about psychology. So who's angry out there today? Having to wait for me. All right. This is a test. All right. You want to have balance in your life. That's one of the key things. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. But in all seriousness, thank you for waiting for us. All right. So we're going to talk about making your psychology work for you and not against you. And one of the interesting things about psychology, I know when I first started trading a long time ago, one of the issues with getting into the markets was that when we began to trade as a novice trader, we probably really didn't have much of an idea of how psychology can actually affect our trading, both to the good and the bad. And one of the things that I was so surprised at when I first started trading is how really the psychological factor in trading really affected how long I stayed in the trade, if I adhered to my stops, and so forth. So it was kind of interesting from a standpoint of worrying about trading systems and the science behind trading, how much the psychology actually affected my trading. And so this is why I think this is a really good topic to talk about, and so very important, really regardless of your experience level, because I think you're going to pick up some things in today's presentation that will help you. All right, so let's jump in and get started here. All right, we always start our webinars with a disclaimer, but I think everybody here knows that there's risk in trading and so forth and so on. All right, so come by and see us at traderscoach.com. My name is Bennett McDowell. Steve already introduced me, so you're welcome to visit us at our website. I've written a couple books you can take a look on at Amazon and read the reviews there, so I'll move along here. All right, let's talk a little bit about psychology. Now, there's a link there that you can go ahead and click on. Steve, if you wouldn't mind putting that up. I don't know if you, Jean, sent that to you, but if not, she'll be sending it out to everybody later, I think, anyway. But this is a link here that you can actually click on and get a psychology report that I think is basically a self-awareness report that we put together that you can work your way through. So that is available for you. Okay, so one of the things about psychology is that we tend to, when we trade, focus on trades that win and lose. And when we focus on trades too much on one side, in other words, you're losing trades, are you spending more emotion thinking about your losing trades or your winning trades? Because whatever you think about and focus on the most tends to occupy your mind the most and tends to almost be a self-realization. So you want to be careful what you focus about. And so a trader's improperly managed psychology can actually manifest losing trades even though you have a proven trading system. You know, I've seen people use the same trading approach. Some do well with it and some don't. And the reason for it usually is their psychology and how they're getting into trades or getting out of trades based on emotion and not so much based on the trading approach. So you always kind of want to be aware of how the emotional aspect of trading can affect your results. And as Warren Buffett says here, you have to be able to control yourself. You can't let emotions get in the way of your mind. And that is so, so true. And he's an investor. He's not even a trader like we are, and he realizes that. All right, so how many out there, and I use the chat here, how many out there find emotions interfering currently with your trading? Especially if you're new, all right? I think if you're more seasoned, hopefully this is not affecting you, but if it is, we'll be able to help you with that. All right, quite a few people say yes, and that's probably why you're here, to learn a little bit more about that. Now, the second question is, when you first started trading, did you realize that emotions were going to be as important as they are? Because I didn't when I first started trading. I had no idea how emotions can actually throw your trading off. No, right? So it's kind of an interesting progression you take when you go into trading. You kind of focus first on the trading system, but then as you venture along, you find out, hey, boy, there's more to this game than just the science behind it. And, it's really kind of an eye-opener. All right, now, let me ask you a question here. Have you had trouble pulling the trigger to enter a trade? How many people have had trouble with that? In other words, you're using a trading approach or your system. It says to go in, but you have trouble pulling the trigger. Why? Why do you think that is? Anybody want to chime in here? Why do you think you had trouble pulling that trigger? Fear, right, fear. But also, too, there's another aspect to it. One of the other aspects is, have you ever heard of you always trade your last trade? And a lot of times what happens is that, let's say you go into a trade today and you get stopped out. And then, of course, right after you get stopped out, the trade takes off. So now you're mad that you got out of the trade. So tomorrow you go into a trade similar to this. It hits your stop, but you don't get out. And then what happens? Well, then it goes down further and further and further, and you have a huge loss. All right? And the reason you didn't get out is because you're trading your last trade. So what you want to do to get rid of the fear and get rid of the emotion in trading is you have to work off a framework of structure. And this structure has got to be built on a case of testing your system, so you're trading with an edge and you're trading with the probabilities. So therefore, when you get out, you know, hey, I might lose this trade, but I'm trading within the confines of my system, and I know if I stay within these confines that I will have a winning expectancy. And I think that's a really important first step to realize if this is happening to you. All right? Now, how many of you have gotten out of trades too soon because of fear? In other words, you get into a trade, sometimes a profitable trade, okay, can be just as hard emotionally as a losing trade. Yep, right. All the time, okay? And again, you know, if you think about it, chances are the reason you're getting out of the trade too soon is once again, you're kind of trading your last trade. You know, and you're sitting on a whole bunch of profit, and you're afraid the market is going to take it from you because that's happened to you before. So again, this is kind of the same pendulum that swings back and forth between, you know, the fear of pulling the trigger to the once again, fear of making you get out of the trade too soon. It's this pendulum back and forth, and it's all connected with fear. And the fear is there because you're trading your last trade. So I think you got to really first take a look inside and see if that's happening to you. All right, now, do you get into trades because of greed? This is another aspect of the emotional roller coaster. We talked a little bit about fear. What about greed? Have you gotten into trades because of greed? And I would think most would say sometimes. Maybe, you know, if you stick with the system, you get in based on the system. But, you know, sometimes you may hear of a tip or something like that, and it may cause you to get in. And kind of greed, you know, is kind of an interesting emotion because, you know, it's kind of a little bit associated, I think, with fear because you fear missing the trade. So, you know, is it greed or is it fear? It's kind of an interesting concept. But I don't think this issue here, okay, is necessarily the same kind of feeling that we have when we're in a trade. You know, missing a trade is one thing, but when you're in a trade, that's when your emotions can get really hyped up. All right, now, do you feel stressed out after trading? How many feel after the trading day, whether you're a day trader? This is more geared for day trading than anybody else, but some people may position trade, short-term swing trade over a few days and see this. Okay, so sometimes, yes, okay, sometimes. All right, now, what you want to do is you want to reduce the stress as much as possible. I mean, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to know that that's what you want to do. The question is, how do you do it? All right, so what you want to do, again, is approach trading in a very structured way so that you are constantly in control of the emotional response to the market. That's the key. And if you're feeling stressed out after trading, it's probably because you're feeling a little bit out of control, a lot of it. Sometimes stress and anger due to trading losses can be a feeling of feeling out of control. So you want to get that control back. And so it's very important, okay, to watch your stress level because an increase in stress can cause a decrease in objectivity and actually opens you up more for emotional trading. So you do have to be careful about that, all right? And if you feel tired or feel like, you know, sometimes we just don't get a good night's sleep, right? And if you don't feel quite right that day or you're a little bit, you know, on edge, might be best to take the day off from trading and come back when you're fresh, okay? Just food for thought. Now, for most of you out there, this is going to be an interesting question. What is the most destructive emotion that you personally feel while trading? And if you wouldn't mind just putting some of those thoughts in your chat area there. All right, what is the most destructive emotion you feel while trading? Give you a second to answer. Okay, frustration, ignorance, okay, fear, doubt, depression, okay? All right, yeah, basically, all right, those are all destructive emotions. And the question is, if you're feeling those, then you really need to fix that before you're going to be really giving yourself a chance to be successful in this business. So we're going to talk about some of the steps we can do to actually fix that. All right, so when we talk about fear and greed, I mentioned before that a question I like to ask is basically when we talk about the pendulum of fear and greed, they're kind of married and yet separate at the same time. And I think some of the goal, what we want to do as traders is realize that not only do we feel that, but other traders feel that too. And we can see fear and greed points in the market. What would a fear and a greed point look like in the market? When you're looking at a chart and you're looking at price bars, what would fear and greed look in the market? They have distinct, looks in the market. For example, fear, okay, can be actually associated with pivot points in the market, people driving the market up and then fearfully getting out. Exuberance, good, Joe. Actually, exuberance is a good one. Excessive greed in the market. All right, long tails on candles, sure. That's all part of the pivot point of the market rolling over. So what you want to do is see fear and greed for what they are. They're those are emotions in the market. And be able to spot these emotions in the market. And your trading system should be designed so it exploits it and you don't fall prey to it. So think about that when you're putting together your trading rules and you're looking at improving your trading results. Does your trading system spot fear and greed in the market? And if it does it allow you to take advantage of it? And yet at the same time, you want to be careful not to be subject to the same fear and greed that is affecting many of the traders out there. All right, and most of the fear points in the market are created by traders that are unstructured. So if you can add structure to your trading, then that allows you to take advantage of those that are unstructured. Okay, so that's something to take away from the fear and greed that we see in the markets. All right, another good question is, where are you now? All right, in your not only in your trading but your psychology and your results. Do you feel anxious? When you trade, do you feel anxiety and stress? Are you working harder but still losing in the markets? Go through these questions. Don't respond to them in the chat, but go through them for a minute as I'm speaking here and take a look and see which ones you kind of are dealing with yourself and which ones are not a problem. And if you have any issues in these, then you want to work on your psychology. You're going to need to actually work on some of these things. Does the market feel like a hostile place for you? And if it does, ask yourself why. What animal does the market represent to you? That's another thing good to ask. And we'll ask that a little bit later to see what everybody says about that. So your goal is to develop the trader's mindset. So obviously you successfully trade. You work less and make more. You approach the markets calmly and stress-free. And you avoid destructive emotional trading triggers such as greed and fear. Take advantage of them. Don't be subject to them. All right? And you want to be calm, all right, and enjoy your life, obviously. All right, you will not be or not develop the trader's mindset unless, okay, you master your mind. So a lot of the questions is, okay, Ben, this is great, but what do I do to change? All right, well, the first step is really up to you, and you have to actually master your mind. So let's look at what is inside us and what we can do to actually create a change. That's really important. All right, there's 3 significant factors affecting psychology in general. There's more, but these are the 3 significant ones. Visual perception is the first one. In other words, when we look out and see the world around us, Are we seeing reality or an illusion? Emotional perception. This is your mood, fearful, scared, or optimistic. Everybody has kind of a level of emotional perception built into them. So in other words, are you an optimistic person generally or a pessimistic person or what? So you can only answer that and everybody's different. Environmental perception, past and present, will affect your psychology as well. So when you take into account these three types of things, this is the baggage that you bring when you look at charts and look at the market. So let's talk about visual perception first. All right? Illusion or reality. Our minds really are more capable of more than we realize. And I'm going to show you some visual examples that illustrate how our minds can conceive and create illusions that we may not even be aware of. For example, all right, if we look at this particular drawing here, it looks like the lines are not straight, but actually they are. Okay, the illusion is created by the different colored boxes that make the lines look warped. And so this is something that we're all looking at the same thing, and yet the lines are straight, but our minds are conceiving something else. So we're not really seeing reality as it really is, are we? I mean, if the lines are straight, but they look crooked to us, what's the reality? Take a look at this. Stare at this person's or this young lady's nose for 15 seconds. Just stare at the point, the dot in the nose. After 15 seconds, glance over to the white part to her right and tell me what you see. Anybody? Pretty girl, right? Okay. I see a brunette, actually. Okay. Somebody says a dot. All right. Well, you probably just need to stare at it longer. But the idea is for most people, when they look at this and then look to the right, they'll actually see a picture of a normal woman. Okay. Kind of interesting how the mind and the eyes work together. What about this one? Count the black dots. Basically, every time you go to see a black dot, it's replaced by a white dot, okay? All right, so, this is another one, okay? You can't do it, right? No black dots, but there are black dots in there. You just can't count them, all right? Let's go on, all right? Now, so that was just a quick illustration of how our minds are capable of more than we realize, and the visual examples illustrate how our minds can conceive and create illusions that we may not even be aware of. So the illusions so far we've looked at are visual, okay, but they also may be created subconsciously, all right, by our thoughts and so forth. And so when we have these illusions, visual and subconsciously, the emotions are creating beliefs within us. And we need to learn how to control these powerful illusions from within. All right, since visual examples illustrate how our minds can conceive and create illusions, this leads to ask, are we seeing the markets as they really are? So when you look at a chart, are you seeing the market as it really is? Let's take a look. Take a look at this chart. This is chart A, okay? If you look at this chart, what kind of emotion does this generate? And I'm going to wait for a couple people to answer, okay? Does this generate any emotion of concern? Kind of boring, right? Flat, no direction. All right, take a look at this chart. What does this generate? How do you feel about that one? Okay, some people are saying nice. They see some of the trends in there. All right. Volatility. Does it create any more emotion in you compared to the other chart? Have you noticed any more emotion associated with this one as compared to the other one? Most people will say yes, okay? All right, more excitement, okay? A little more activity, right? But guess what? They're the same chart. The only difference is that one is, zoomed in and spread out. But they're the same chart. So the next question I have for you, okay, if we can do this with charts, then how you have price represented on your desktop can certainly cause emotions, okay, differently for different traders depending upon what they're looking at, even though they're looking at the same market. All right? So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about when you're looking at charts and so forth. And why some people can look at what you think is a flat market, and they look at it as a tradable market. It's kind of interesting, just by changing the resolution of the charts. So that's an example of visual perception and how we need to think about that when we actually take a look at charts, okay? All right, let's take a look at the emotional perspective. All right, now, everybody out there, write down, without thinking, okay, what animal does the market signify to you? What animal does the market signify to you? I'm going to give you a minute just to do this. Oh, this is great. Everybody's sharing. Super. Okay, some say a lion, a snake, a bull, fox, eagle, and so forth. Okay, great. Okay, good. Don't think too much. Just write down your first response, your first thought. Cool. All right. Now, a little bit about your answer. Okay. Your answer is going to tell you a lot about your beliefs about the market. You know, and with that, if you're whatever animal you select, okay, it's not so important the animal, but it's what's important is what the animal signifies to you. All right. If you love lions and they're nice, you think they're nice and cuddly, then the market is going to be a friendly place for you. But if a lion can rip you apart, all right, and you're scared to death of it, then you have a very fearful mindset of the market. Okay? If a snake is something that, is sneaky and you got to be on the guard for it and you can't always see it, that means kind of the market is kind of a little bit like that to you as well. So this kind of simple little question and answer here for you kind of tells you a lot about your overall feelings and your beliefs about the market. So I want you to remember that. So if you tend to be getting out of trades too soon, I'll tend to bet your animal you chose was threatening to you in some form, or at least tricky. All right. If you don't have that problem, you probably chose something a little bit more nicer, so to speak. Now, the other side of the coin is, if you chose an animal that you can kick around and it's not going to bite you and nothing's going to happen, well, then they're a little too overconfident with the market. And people that tend to choose an animal that is non-threatening and never combative, they tend not to use as much risk control as they should in the market. So your animal in this silly little test can tell you a lot about how you're dealing with the markets from an emotional standpoint. It's kind of a fun thing to kind of take a look at. All right, so now the interesting thing with fear and greed, and especially fear is usually the reason most people never leave their comfort zone. All right, it is uncomfortable and to go to an area where you haven't been to, and sometimes downright scary. So fear is a very, very powerful emotion for all of us, and it usually keeps us stuck. And so that's something you need to really think about. So if you're feeling fear in the market, chances are you're going to be stuck. You're feeling stuck in the market. Now, I love this little saying about fear, false evidence appearing real, because most of the fear that we fear in the markets is this. Now, if somebody's pointing a gun at you and you're fearful, well, you have a darn good reason to be fearful, right? Okay? But in the situation of what we're really referring to is a lot of times our fear is more a result of not seeing reality for really the way it is, or creating a reality of fear. All right? So fear is a very relative thing, too. What's fearful to one person may not be fearful to another. So it's a very relative thing, which is makes for the case, again, that we create our own level of fear, what we consider fearful and not. All right? So, what you want to do as a trader is when you feel fear in a trade, try to distinguish whether that fear is real or false. All right, because both of them are going to create emotions. All right, and our body really can't tell. If we're feeling fear, it can't tell what's real and what's not. Okay, it creates the emotion of flight, so to speak. But as a trader, you really want to learn to distinguish between real and false fear. Okay, so I think that's kind of really an important thing, because fear, for the most of the time, is the illusion of what we feel is really threatening, and it's really based on us. All right. Now, so what do we do about fear? How do you tend to go about doing something about it? Well, the idea is, in order to stop fear that's not real, all right, you need to learn a few things or think about a few things. There are a variety of different professions where people put their life on the line, okay? Long time ago, a samurai warrior, combat fighter pilots, race car drivers, Navy SEALs, all these people, could die at any point, okay? Traders, okay, we can get hurt by losing our money, right? So, these are all areas where we put it on the line. So what do samurai warriors, combat fighter pilots, race car drivers, and Navy SEALs have in common? Does anybody want to chime in on that? What do they have in common? Now, I'm not talking about fitness. Gary, you hit the nail on the head. Training. All right? And they all, what is training? It's practicing. Okay? For example, pilots, even, combat pilots or commercial pilots, they spend hours in a flight simulator. And why do they do that? Because when they get in a plane and they got passengers in there and something goes wrong, they know what to do instinctively because they spent hours practicing that in a flight simulator. So my question to you is, as a trader, why are so many traders, okay, not going to want a paper trade, which is simulated trading? Instead, they just want to jump into the markets with real money. That's like a pilot getting into a plane with a bunch of passengers not knowing what the heck they're doing. You see the correlation? So if you want to stop the fear, okay, generate trading rules, practice, practice, practice. Know your win to loss percentage, know your payoff ratio, know how many consecutive losses in a row that your system, okay, generates, so you have all the stats in front of you. And the only way you're going to know those is by practice, practice, practice. And a lot of people will say, well, that's great, but paper trading is not the same as trading with real money. Well, no kidding. Okay, we all know that. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to know that. But the thing is that if you go into the markets without any training and you fail, all right, then you're going to be saying, well, is my trading system no good, or was my emotions screwed up? And you can't answer that question if you do it that way. But if you go into a simulated or paper trading environment and you're successful on 100 trades and you go into the markets and you don't do well, chances are you are not doing well because of emotions are affecting your outcome. And that's at least, now you know what to fix. Otherwise, you don't know what to fix. So the idea here is you need to go back and train some more until you can get into the market and be a reaction with no mind. You want to have no fear, okay? All right, so that is the deal with a lot of stopping the fear. And, practicing and simulated trading, it's a lot of work, and a lot of people don't want to do it. But there's no shortcut here, folks. You got to do it, okay? You got to do it. And Gary's saying paper trading, here we go. Here's a typical response. Paper trading simulation with options is not accurate, so I'm not going to bother doing it. All right, Gary, go about and do the best you can. But I guarantee you, all right, you will lose a lot of money before you become successful. All right? There's a lot of option traders that have figured out how to practice, okay, with options, and you can do it too. You just have to do the research on how to do it, okay? But anybody that says they don't paper trade, it's an excuse. Okay, sorry, I don't buy it. All right, so that's my feeling on that. If you want to stop the fear, you've really got to roll up your sleeves and get in there and generate some practice trades to a point where you've got a winning system. All right? All right, so beliefs and thoughts. What is the difference and relationship between beliefs, thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors? All right, so we've got a kind of an area here where, do beliefs come before thoughts, or do thoughts come before, after beliefs, and, the whole 9 yards. But what I want you to do, instead of worrying about really which one comes first, is look at the process in which we're talking about here. So thoughts are kind of interesting because every one of us, has thousands of thoughts that come into our mind every day. Some we, spend time thinking about, others we don't, and, so some are energized and some are not. So thoughts, subconscious and conscious, going through your mind, but none of them have power except really the ones that we energize by emotions. So the thoughts that we energize are the ones that really can turn into beliefs. So a belief is an energized thought that you make real or accept as true. Unfortunately, some beliefs may not be based on current reality. So that's the kind of the thing you got to be careful about. All right, attitudes. Beliefs can create attitudes and can influence actions and reactions. Behaviors, the result of beliefs, thoughts, and attitudes set into action. Emotions that are attached to our thoughts thus ultimately creates behavior. So think about this for a minute. If you are energizing failure, the thought of failure, or energizing losses more than you're energizing wins, all right, you're going to be slanted or affected more in that direction. All right, you're going to be less energetic. You're not going to be as optimistic, and you're going to start to go down that path that really is not a very good place to go for being successful. So you got to guard your thoughts. And what I try to do is when I have a loss, and this takes some time to work at it because as human beings we don't like losses, all right? But try to learn from them, okay? And there's two kinds of losses. One are basically mental losses, and those are losses where we actually made a mistake, all right? So you can learn from those. And then there's losses which are just part of the business. We do everything right and still get stopped out, all right? So if you do that and you get stopped out, all right, okay, don't energize it too much. Just move on, okay? If you sit there and energize every loss, all right, you're going to be stuck, in the gutter, so to speak. So you don't want to do that, okay? All right, so let's keep on here. All right, how can this affect your trading? Well, we kind of went about that, all right? As a trader, how much emotions do you attach to losing and winning? We just talked about that. And your core beliefs about yourself. Deep down inside, we all have core beliefs, okay? Do you perceive yourself as a winner or a loser? All right, what are your core thoughts about money? And I'm not going to get into this because this is very personal for each one of us, okay? But what I'm trying to do is get you to think about what's inside you. And your core beliefs about money, are they good or bad? All right, if you have a bad belief that money's bad, you need to change that or you're going to have a hard time making money in the markets. All right, how about trading? Is it possible? Do you think it's possible to be successful? Because if you don't think it's possible, you're probably going to run around a little bit with a chip on your shoulder. And you're going to try to find every reason why trading is not possible instead of looking for every reason why it is possible. All right, what's your thoughts and core beliefs about success? Okay, that's another thing to think about. Do you deserve it? All right, and the reasons why you feel about these things can go way back in your life, way back in your time, and can be actually a part of the environment that you're in, which is what we're going to talk about next, because everyone has a unique and different environment. Okay, your environment will impact your belief system. Think about your past and how that influences your belief. Think about your present and how that influences your belief. The result is that we all have our unique maze that we have to work through. The thing here is that none of us are perfect. All right, none of us are born traders. All of us have issues. The thing what we want to do is figure out what they are, become aware of them first. Psychologists say in order for somebody to get over their issues, psychological issues, they first have to know what they are. All right, a lot of people spend a lot of time in denial, not wanting to accept something, and therefore they never are able to really do anything about it. So you first have to accept and realize what the issue is. So take a look at your unique maze and see where your trigger points are. Where are your issues? Where the trigger points are? When you get stressed out in the market, what triggers that? Sit with yourself and see if you can figure that out. I had one client that actually grew up in a fairly wealthy family, but the problem is that in his environment where he grew up, if you didn't have a 9-to-5 job or went to Harvard or worked in a big company, you were a loser. Okay, it didn't count. They weren't entrepreneurs. You work at IBM and work your way up the ladder. And so when he made the jump to be a trader, he had to really deal with all that programming that really affected his beliefs as well before he could be successful. So that's what I'm talking about, in that we have a unique environment that is unique to all of us. The old adage, taking all this into account, we now ask, is the glass half full or half empty? All right? So is this a visual illusion or a belief illusion, optimism or pessimism? Okay? All right, so there you have it. There you have it. It all depends upon your mindset and how you see things. All right, so to wrap it up here, okay, we're just about done. I want to just kind of end here and basically, think about what you see out there, what causes you fear, what kind of emotions are you putting into losing trades and winning trades? And, is your mind creating illusions you may not even be aware of, even when you're just looking at charts, just by the way you have the chart set up? All right, there was another study that said if you had your monitors, all right, sitting below your eye level, that actually affected you in a negative way from a mood standpoint. So you may want to move your monitors up a little bit so they're eye level, if not a little bit above, okay? So that's kind of interesting. All right, are your emotions such as fear and greed distorting what is real and how you interpret and act in the markets? Okay, all questions you can ask yourself. How are your mind sees and interpret the markets may be affecting your trading without you even being aware of it? So there's a lot of stuff that goes on in that subconscious that we may not see or want to see, all right? And so do you think it is important to learn skills to control your emotions and identify distorted illusions before they sabotage your trading? You bet, okay? In fact, I'll go one step further and say, if you don't have a handle on some of this stuff that we talked about today, it's going to be tough for you to be successful. And a lot of it's going to be because you end up trading your last trade. All right, now we're kind of running a little late because we got started late, so I don't know how many questions we'll really be able to answer here. But if you have anything you want to talk about, feel free to ask. Gary, thank you. Okay, I appreciate that. And it's been my pleasure to present here as well. Okay, but again, to solve some of these issues, you really got to look inwardly. That's the key. Okay. All right, so I think that's really important. All right, and just leave you with a few little things here that I think are kind of fun. Winners are not people who never fail, but they are people who never quit. How true, right? Okay? All of us, all right, you live long enough, you're going to have failure, and you're going to have setbacks. Become the kind of person that won't be the victim. Become the person that solves the problem. And that is the key to success, no matter, not just in trading, but everything you do, okay? Now, the next step here, okay, is to get that report again, because I kind of think it will give you a head start on where to go next. It's we'll get that link out to you. That's a long link to kind of, without kind of a link I can put in there. And I don't have one here because I'm on a different computer because we had the technology issues here. But we'll get that link to you at some point, okay? But this is a little report here that kind of you can fill out on your own that will help you discover a little bit more about yourself. All right, so I want to thank everybody for attending here, okay? And let me just see if there's any last-minute things. All right. Yes, managing risk. Tom's saying I didn't speak about risk. And Tom, you're right. Risk is a very important aspect. I lump risk control under the area of having good trading rules. Because if you're, testing your approach, risk control has to be a major part of it because we do lose in the market. So you want to keep those losing trades extremely small. Okay? So excellent. All right. Let's see what else we have. I have heard it is better to start with real money but trade small so you can experience the emotion. I would say wait a little bit, do the simulated trading, okay, and then if you want to go in small, you can. But the idea behind the simulated trading is that when you go into the markets, the problem is that it's not like playing tennis or golf where you get matched up with somebody on your level. You're jumping into the markets with experienced traders, novice traders, and all sorts of traders, all right? And if you're not prepared, you're going to get eaten alive. So the reason I say that is I just don't want you to lose your shirt, okay? That's the main thing. All right, sincere thanks from Canada. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that. Thank you. Ron, would you show us the slide with my books? Ooh, that's way back in the beginning. Let me see if I can get there quickly. Let's see how I can do that. Yeah, I guess I can just go back. All right, I'll put them on the books there. You can get them in Amazon, so that's, just put my name in there. Bennett, McDowell, there they are. Okay. So I wrote a book on risk control, on the trading system I use, Survival Guide for Traders. Basically talks a little bit about how to run your trading like a hedge fund right from your home, and then Elliott Wave, which is a form of technical analysis that I'm good at. All right, so let's see. Okay, great. I think that's it. I answered them all. Steve, I don't know if I can hear you, so I guess I'll just go ahead and end now, but I want to thank you very much for having me. And Steve is a great guy. He does candlesticks, which is a great form of technical analysis. So if you're using that, hey, just practice and become an expert with that. That's the key. So when you go into the markets, you know what you're doing. Really important. And when you have structure like that, then you're not going to be subject to the emotional swings that hit so many traders when they trade without a set of good rules. Okay, that's it for now. I'll sign off. Thanks so much, everybody.